Hello and welcome back to another video about hockey. Today we will be talking about the Ottawa Senators. Now, this idea came to me based off a comment or a reply to a comment on the last video. They let the hockey puck speak, sent the Ottawa Senators respectfully. In that context, he's saying he thinks they are the best young core with the future. And I'm going to look at the Ottawa Senators and see how I think they project going forward, and if they can go from being in the hunt in the wild card to maybe a wild card spot or maybe even a divisional spot next year. Now that's going to be pretty tough considering they're in the same division as Tampa, Boston, and Toronto, but things change in the NHL quicker than you realize sometimes. And right before you know it, one team might fall off and another might come up, and that team could be the Senators. Right now, 6th in the wild card race. They're kind of 2 straight losses. They're kind of falling out of it. Probably not a playoff team this year, but we're more so focused on the future. So we're going to look at cap friendly first here. And you look at key contracts coming up is DeBrincat. Now, if you go to the Senators stats here and look, he's not having the best year to his standards in terms of goal scoring, which is what you got DeBrincat for. So in the long run, this down year might help the Senators actually get DeBrincat on a lower number, and then he can turn up later on and start producing at the goal rate that he is known for, which last year, if I click on him real quick, hopefully this loads quick, you can see he had about 41, 32, and 52. This year, 21 and 66 in his first year in Ottawa. And you could contribute that to new team, new scenery, not gelling right off the bat. And that slow start may cost his wallet a bit, but I think in the long run, it may be good for the Senators because the cap hit's lower. You then go back. Not a lot of other notable people coming up this year. They already have Tim Stützle on an extension at $8.3 million, which is probably going to be one of those deals we talk about in 4 or 5 years as one of the best, if not the best, in the NHL. The dude's a stud, 70-some points this year, I think it was. We'll go back from DeBrincat here. He leads the team in points, 71 and 62, 32 goals. I believe he's only 20 or 21. 21, yep. And he just turned 21 not too long ago, so he's a young 21, fresh 21. So you look at the Ottawa Senators, you go to their lineup here, and you see the top 6. It's pretty set, and you then go back to, well, I shouldn't say it's set. You see down here, all the way down to injuries on daily faceoff, Josh Norris has been out the whole year. You'd plug him into the top 6, drop Shane Pinto down to the third line, and you'd have Tkachuk, Stützle, Batherson, DeBrincat, Norris, and Giroux, which is a pretty filthy top 6 in terms of scoring. It's the bottom 6 where you kind of have to figure it out. And with that being said, you go back to cap friendly here and you look, and next year projected cap space about $16 million. You can see it right here. Hopefully, you can see that clearly on your screen. And they have to sign DeBrincat, which let's just assume he's an $8 million player. Let's give him a little bump here. I don't think he'll probably get much higher than Brady Tkachuk, but let's say he gets that. So you got about $8 million to play with. Maybe you want to re-sign a depth piece. Maybe you want Hamonic Bees. He's one of your few right shot Ds. You want him back at $3 million. So you don't really have a lot in terms of being able to add to the offensive core in terms of free agency. Maybe you can get a guy or two to fill out the third line role. That's probably what's going to happen. Is they'll probably shuffle some of these guys out and shuffle some new guys in. Probably keep some of the guys they like, some of the young people like Pinto, who's having a pretty solid year. And they're going to have to rely on prospects, which this brings us to another thing. Ottawa Senators draft capital, which you can see right here, 2023, no round 1, unless it's the top 5 because of the trade for to Arizona for Chikrin. Gets rid of that unless it's top 5. If it is top 5, they give up next year's. No second round, no third round. The next year, no third round. And then they don't really have a first rounder until next year. And so you're not really restocking the cupboard this draft specifically. And you're going to have to rely on some of the prospects. And we'll go into some of their top prospects to fill out some roles on forward here, which their top prospect listed is Ridley Gregg, which Ridley Gregg is an intriguing prospect because he's very energetic, decent hands, underrated hands, decent passer. But you're not really sure how much of a scoring threat he can be at the next level yet. That's still to be determined. 27 points in 35 games, your first AHL season, is not bad. It's really if he can take steps forward with that. But that being said, he's got the profile of a third-line center, maybe in ability to fill out a bottom 6 role, regardless of if his offensive potential gets there, which, when you look at the Senators, what do they need? Bottom 6 role players. So there's a good shot that Ridley Gregg next year is given a good shot on the third or fourth line for the Senators to carve out a role in the NHL and be an effective player, which I would put money on him doing that. I just don't know how high the upside is with scoring, but he might be able to figure it out. We'll go to these two guys underneath next. I want to go to the other forwards who are ranked in their top 5 prospects by Scott Wheeler of The Athletic, which I recommend The Athletic. Anyway, you have Tyler Boucher, Zach Ostapchuk, and Igor Sokolov. Now, these guys are all similar in terms of they're big in terms of weight for prospects, all over 200 pounds, no lightweights here. And I like the profile of these players a lot. Now, I'm not going to say all of them will hit, but I think Zach Ostapchuk is someone who could really carve out a role potentially next year for the Ottawa Senators. And I feel like if he was to just, be molded by Brady Tkachuk to play like Brady Tkachuk, this could be a very dangerous player going forward for the Senators. Igor Sokolov, 15 points in 59 games, solid point total in the AHL, 6'3", 222, big dude. He's very good at protecting the puck from the highlights I've seen. He could transition well, and these are the type of players. And Tyler Boucher, I saw play at BU. He was, as you can tell by the stats here, 3-17, not that impressive at BU. Kind of underwhelming so far in juniors as well from the points. I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen him play a game in juniors, but those stat totals for a top 10 pick are not that promising. But regardless, these are players who have the profile who can fill out bottom 6 roles. I think my favorite prospect the Senators have is probably Ostapchuk. Just from the highlights I've seen, he looks like a player who's going to be a problem at the next level. Just the build, the way he has a good shot too. I think he might be a good player for the third line in the Senators going future. And if you can get someone like him and a Ridley Gregg to hit, and you can have them on low cap totals because of the low cap space I've already mentioned for the Senators, that's really what you need to pan out for the Senators to go from the wild card team or the wild in the hunt team they are right now to being a contender. And also, one thing that needs to be said about the Senators is if Josh Norris is healthy this year, there's a good shot that they may be a little higher up in the standings. And another thing that you have to talk about when talking about the Senators is goaltending. And we'll go back to screen share here. And one thing to be noted is they've had multiple goalies have to be the guy. Right now, Cam Talbot and Anton Forsberg are both injured, so they are relying on two 22-year-olds, two players who are younger than me, which is weird to think in net. But Mads Søgaard and Kevin, I'm going to be honest, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Mandalise. And both averaging over 3 goals against per game. Kevin, only 3 games, 9-16. That's not bad. Shows you the defense hasn't been that good for him then. And Mads is under 900. Both these guys are just in spots they shouldn't be at in this point in their career, so you can't really judge them on that. But the thing is, Cam Talbot and Anton Forsberg both getting injured were also massive blows to the Senators. If you take away injuries from this team, which injuries happen in hockey, but if you add Josh Norris and you add a fully healthy Talbot or Forsberg for the whole year, there's a few more points to be had in the standings, and we could be talking about the Senators as a wild card team this year, which is why it's not too surprising to be talking about the Senators on the come-up, considering a lot of their top scorers are pretty young. You go back to Cap Friendly here. Oh, that's not Cap Friendly. That's their lines. You go and you look, and it's Brady Tkachuk, 23, DeBrincat, 25, Batherson, 24, Stützle, 21, Tkachuk, I already mentioned him. Giroux's 35, but he's still producing at point per game. I think the thing about Claude Giroux is, as long as he's with the players, he's within the top 6, I think he's going to produce. Too much IQ, passing skill doesn't really diminish with age. The things that really go are physical abilities like speed and power. And Claude Giroux, never really like a power player. Used to have a little bit of speed, but I think the IQ in his head, kind of like a David Krejci, I think he's going to age fine as long as he stays healthy. And you look, Josh Norris, 23. So this young core is not going anywhere. If you can get a few of your prospects to hit, that's important. Now, you're going to talk about Søgaard for a second. He's their top goalie prospect. And the stats at every level aren't too impressive. The size is impressive of this dude, though. He's 6'8", 200 pounds, so he's really tall. And could be like a Ben Bishop player who takes a little bit to get there. Goalies sometimes take a while. This guy could be a force in the NHL in like 3-4 years, but it's kind of, he needs more seasoning at a lower level. And until he gets that and gets like more reps under his belt at the lower level, you're probably not looking at him next year. So when you go back to the Cap Friendly here, let me go back to screen share. You got to go back into goaltending. Cam Talbot's coming out the books, and I'm sorry about this changing color ads. Ads are so annoying, but is what it is. You got Talbot coming off the books. You got Anton Forsberg signed for the next 3 years. So what you need to do in free agency is sign a goalie who has NHL experience, who has some upside to challenge Forsberg for the number 1 spot. Ideally, I think you get a goalie who's better than Anton Forsberg, and you could have a nice little cheap goaltending combo, because that's probably their biggest need to add. And the last thing we're going to look at here to wrap up looking at the Senators is a D-core. And you look, they have Thomas Chabot, they got Jacob Chikrin, Travis Hamonick's a UFA, Artem Zub they just re-upped for 4.6, Nick Holden is a whatever player at this point, Jake Sanderson, very good young promising player for them. He's 20 years old. I think he was a 4th overall pick. And Eric Brandstrom, who, if we're being honest, is kind of a bust at this point. He was supposed to be an offensive force, and he hasn't really produced at that level. And you look at the Senators on their pairs right now. This is how they line up. Chikrin on the left, Sanderson on the left, Artem Zub, Hamonic. Chabot's also left, so... Okay, that page is not going to load now. Okay, it did. So the one thing about the Senators D-core that's a little bit of a concern is how many left shots there are compared to right shots. You see Sanderson left, Chikrin left, Chabot left, Jacob Chikrin they list as can playing right. I'm not a fan of playing people on their offside. If I'm the Senators, you're running Zub and Chabot as your top pair. Probably then Hamonic and Chikrin next year. I think you probably have to re-up. But one thing that would really be big, and I'm going to go back to the prospects here, is Jacob Bernard Docker. Now, if you look, hasn't really carved out a spot in the AHL yet. Still only 22 years old. I'm not really sure what to expect from Jacob Bernard Docker. Was a very good player at North Dakota and has never really been known for being a scorer. So these stats don't really show you much down here. If he can develop into a third pairing guy for them, or something like that, he shoots right, and they need right shots. So if he can turn into a shutdown defenseman to pair with someone like Chikrin on the second pair, or maybe one day even Chabot, that would be big for them. And I know defensive defensemen sometimes take a while to get into the AHL. So he's maybe one of their most important prospects just because they don't have a lot of right shot defensemen, and they're hard to get. But Ottawa mostly needs to address their third line scoring, because if you look at their stats here, let me go back to screen share. There's such a huge drop off after these top guys, and then Shane Pinto at 28 and 66. That's their next non-top 6 forward. And then Jake Sanderson 25 and 61, Derek Brassard 21 and 53. They just need more from that third line to really take that next step. So you're gonna need some prospects to hit there, or sign some people in free agency. The goaltending needs work, and you probably need a right defenseman. And this is why the Senators are where they are right now. They have some pretty big gaps that need to be filled, and some players who just aren't at their peak level yet, which will happen. Like Brady Tkachuk's probably not peak Brady Tkachuk yet. Alex DeBrincat, not in his best form, but he's up there. And then Drake Batherson. Tim Stützle is going to get better, even though he's already elite. He's going to figure out the two-way game a little better. So the Senators have a lot of potential, and because of this, I would say they will probably be a playoff team next year, especially if they can stay healthy. So that's all I really have on the Senators today. If you have any thoughts or any comments, if you are a Senators fan, please drop them below. Leave a like and subscribe if you like the content talking and analyzing hockey teams. Suggest a team you want me to talk about next, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.